I stood in the conference room at Williams and Connolly, watching Jennifer Walsh, our estate attorney, methodically arrange documents across the polished mahogany table. The afternoon sun filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the Greenwich skyline. Patricia sat beside me, her fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on her Hermes bag, a $15,000 anniversary gift I'd given her last year. The drumming was new, a tick she developed recently that seemed out of character for a woman who'd spent 25 years perfecting the art of composure. Let's begin with the overview of your current estate structure, Jennifer said, adjusting her tortoiseshell glasses. She'd been our attorney for 15 years, had guided us through the purchase of our home, the establishment of the children's trust funds, and now this, the integration of my father's massive inheritance into our financial planning. The inheritance from your father's estate has cleared all probate challenges. $15 million, transferred clean and clear. My condolences again on your loss, Richard. I nodded, the weight of those words still surreal. My father and I had maintained a complicated relationship. The immigrant who'd built a fortune in commercial real estate, who'd pushed his only son toward financial markets rather than construction sites. Even in death, he'd surprised me. I'd expected maybe $1 million or $2 million. Not his entire empire liquidated into cash. The question now, Jennifer continued, is how to properly integrate this windfall into your existing estate plan. Given your current net worth of approximately $12 million, this more than doubles your assets. We need to ensure proper protection and distribution strategies. Patricia shifted in her seat, uncrossing and recrossing her legs. She wore the Saint Laurent dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one that brought out the green in her hazel eyes. Those eyes, which had once looked at me with such warmth during our law school days at Columbia, now seemed to focus somewhere just past my shoulder. I've prepared several scenarios, Jennifer said, sliding documents toward us. The first maintains your current structure, joint ownership of primary assets with the inheritance commingled into your joint accounts. The second creates a separate trust for the inherited funds, maintaining their character as individual property. The third, why would we keep it separate? Patricia interrupted, her voice carrying an edge I'd rarely heard in professional settings. We're married. What's Richard's is mine, and vice versa. That's how we've always done things. Jennifer paused, her decades of experience showing in the diplomatic smile that followed. Of course, that's one approach. However, given the substantial amount involved, there are tax advantages to consider. Also, Connecticut law treats inherited assets as separate property unless actively commingled. Some couples prefer to maintain that distinction for estate planning purposes. Some couples? Patricia's laugh was brittle. We're not some couples, Jennifer. We've been married for 25 years. We have 2 children in Ivy League schools. We share everything. I studied my wife's profile, noting the tension in her jaw, the way her breathing had quickened. In 25 years of marriage, I'd learned to read Patricia's moods like a trader reads market indicators. This wasn't about money, at least not entirely. This was about control. Let's review all the options before making any decisions, I suggested, placing a calming hand on Patricia's arm. She flinched slightly at my touch, another new behavior I'd noticed lately. Jennifer, please continue. The attorney moved through the scenarios with professional efficiency. Trust structures, tax implications, generational wealth transfer strategies. Patricia's attention seemed to wander, her gaze drifting to her phone screen, which lay face down on the table, but occasionally lit up with notifications. Now, let's review your current beneficiary designations, Jennifer said, pulling out a new folder. It's crucial these align with your overall estate plan, as they supersede any instructions in your will. I'll start with the life insurance policies. She began reading through the familiar list. Policies we'd established when the children were young, when our primary concern was ensuring their education and care if something happened to us. Everything seemed routine until Jennifer paused, her brow furrowing. I'm seeing some recent changes here, she said slowly. Patricia, there's a name I don't recognize. Alexander Dimitrov? He's listed as a contingent beneficiary on your personal life insurance policy. The transformation in my wife was instant and alarming. The color drained from her face so rapidly, I thought she might faint. Her hand, which had been reaching for her water glass, froze midway. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I. That must be. Patricia's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. Alexander is my yoga instructor. I thought, in case something happened to both Richard and me, someone should be listed to handle things. He's very spiritual, very charitable. He'd make sure the money went to good causes. Jennifer set down the paper slowly, her expression carefully neutral. I see. And this change was made 6 months ago? Along with modifications to your retirement accounts and... Oh. She looked up sharply. He's also been added to your personal investment portfolio as a joint account holder? My mind struggled to process what I was hearing. 6 months ago. That's when Patricia had thrown herself into yoga after my father's death, claiming she needed something to help with the stress and grief. I'd been supportive, even happy she'd found an outlet. She'd seemed lighter, more energetic. I'd attributed the positive changes to exercise and meditation. That can't be right, I said, hearing the hollow quality in my own voice. Patricia, why would you add your yoga instructor to our financial accounts? Not our accounts, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just my personal ones. The ones from my design business. It's complicated. Can we discuss this later? No, Jennifer said firmly, her professional mask slipping slightly. I'm sorry, but as your attorney, I need to understand what's happening here. Adding a non-family member as a beneficiary or joint account holder without your spouse's knowledge raises serious legal and ethical concerns. Mr. Dimitrov, is he a business partner? A creditor? Is there a written agreement explaining this arrangement? Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need to use the restroom. She grabbed her phone, but left her purse, practically running from the room. Jennifer waited until the door clicked shut before turning to me. Richard, in 30 years of practice, I've seen this pattern exactly 3 times. Each time, it ended badly. You need to investigate this immediately. You think she's having an affair? It wasn't a question. I think she's done more than have an affair. These aren't emotional decisions. They're calculated financial moves. The timing, 6 months after your father's diagnosis, became public knowledge. Richard, I need to ask you something difficult. Has Patricia shown any unusual interest in your health lately? Encouraged any risky activities? Changed your diet? Suggested new medications? The room seemed to tilt. She's been pushing me to try extreme sports. Skydiving for my birthday. Motorcycle lessons. Said I needed to live more adventurously now that we have financial freedom. Jennifer's face went pale. Richard, I'm going to give you a name. Marcus Webb. He's a private investigator, former FBI, completely discreet. You need to call him today. She scribbled on a card. And until you know what's happening, be very careful. Don't eat or drink anything you haven't prepared yourself. Don't sign any documents she presents. And for God's sake, don't go skydiving. Patricia returned, her makeup freshly applied but unable to hide the redness around her eyes. I'm not feeling well, she announced without looking at either of us. Richard, can we finish this another time? Of course, Jennifer replied smoothly. I'll have my assistant reschedule. Richard, I'll email you those investment recommendations we discussed. The ride home in my Mercedes S-Class felt like navigating a minefield. Patricia stared out the window, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. 25 years of marriage, and I suddenly felt like I was sitting next to a stranger. The familiar streets of Greenwich rolled past. Manicured lawns, stone walls, homes of friends we'd dined with countless times. All of it felt surreal now, like a movie set for a life that might not have been real. You're very quiet, Patricia said as we turned into our driveway. Processing, I replied. It's a lot of money, a lot of responsibility. Your father always was dramatic, she said with false lightness. Even in death. Leaving everything to you like some kind of king passing on his crown. There was bitterness there I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I'd just never been listening. Our house stood before us, A 1920s Tudor revival on 3 acres, meticulously restored and expanded over the years. Patricia's pride and joy. She'd overseen every renovation, every decoration choice. Looking at it now, I wondered how much of our life together had been her creation, her script that I'd simply acted out. "I'm going to lie down," she said the moment we entered. "This headache is killing me." I watched her climb the stairs, noting the way she clutched the banister. Fear? Guilt? Or just the physical manifestation of a secret too heavy to carry? I went to my home office and closed the door, my sanctuary of dark wood and leather-bound books. The investigator Jennifer recommended, Marcus Webb, answered on the second ring. "Mr. Townsend, Jennifer Walsh said you might call. Are you somewhere you can speak freely?" "Yes, my office. My wife is upstairs." "Good. Don't change any routines yet. Act normally. Can you meet tomorrow morning? My office in Stamford. I'll text you the address." That fast? "Mr. Townsend, if Jennifer Walsh is concerned enough to refer you to me immediately, then yes, that fast. Whatever's happening, time is not your friend." That night, dinner was a performance. Patricia had recovered enough to prepare coq au vin, one of my favorites. She'd opened a bottle of 2015 Chateau d'Yquem, absurdly expensive for a Tuesday night. "What's the occasion?" I asked, watching her pour generous glasses. "Can't a wife spoil her husband occasionally?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Besides, with your inheritance, we can afford to celebrate a little." I pretended to sip the wine, mind racing. Was I being paranoid? Was I really sitting across from my wife of 25 years, wondering if she was trying to poison me? "Tell me about your yoga instructor," I said casually, cutting into the chicken. "Alexander, was it? You've mentioned him before, but I don't know much about him." Patricia's hand stilled for just a moment on her wineglass. "Oh, he's wonderful. Very experienced. Trained in India, actually. He has this whole philosophy about wellness being more than just physical. It's transformative." "Sounds intense. How old is he?" "I don't know. 30s, maybe? Age doesn't matter in spiritual practices." "And he teaches at that studio in Westport?" "Among other places. He does a lot of private coaching, too. Very exclusive clientele." She took a large sip of wine. "Why the sudden interest?" "Just curious about the person who's had such a positive impact on you. You've seemed different lately. Happier." "Have I?" She smiled, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman I'd fallen in love with at Columbia. Then it was gone, replaced by this stranger wearing Patricia's face. "I suppose I have been happier. It's nice to have something that's just mine, you know? Something separate from being a wife and mother." "Everyone needs that," I agreed. "Maybe I should meet him. Take a class." "No." The word came out sharp, almost violent. She caught herself, laughed awkwardly. "I mean, it's really more of a women's space. You'd be uncomfortable. Besides, you hate yoga. Remember when we tried that couples class in the Hamptons?" I did remember. 10 years ago, she'd barely been able to contain her laughter at my attempts at downward dog. We'd left early and made love in the car like teenagers. When had we last been that spontaneous? That connected? "You're right," I conceded. "I'll stick to my squash games." After dinner, Patricia suggested we watch something in the media room, but I begged off, claiming work emails. In my office, I pulled up our financial accounts on my secure laptop. Everything appeared normal at first glance: our joint checking, savings, the investment portfolios. But Patricia's personal accounts, the ones tied to her interior design business, showed unusual activity. Large cash withdrawals starting 6 months ago. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Always just under the $10,000 federal reporting requirement. Over $200,000 in total, bleeding out of accounts that had been built over 15 years of her career. I thought about confronting her immediately, but Marcus Webb's words echoed. Don't change any routines. Act normally. Instead, I pulled up Instagram on my phone and searched for Alexander Dimitrov. The account was public, A carefully curated feed of shirtless yoga poses, sunrise meditations, and philosophical quotes overlaid on beach scenes. The man was undeniably handsome. Dark hair, sculpted physique, the kind of intense eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. The lifestyle portrayed was interesting too. Designer workout gear, photos from Turks and Caicos, Mykonos, Aspen. A new Porsche 911 Turbo featured prominently. Either yoga instruction paid far better than I'd imagined, or Alexander had other sources of income. I scrolled through his followers, my heart sinking as I recognized names. Margaret Worthington, divorced last year after her husband's death in a boating accident. Jennifer Crandall, widowed 2 years ago when her husband had a heart attack during a tennis match. Both women were members of our country club. Both had been left very wealthy. Both now featured occasionally in Alexander's photos, smiling at beachside retreats or charity galas. A pattern was emerging, one that made my blood run cold. The next morning, I left for the office at my usual time, but drove to Stamford instead. Marcus Webb's office was in a nondescript building, the kind of place you'd pass 1,000 times without noticing. The man himself was exactly what you'd expect from former FBI. Alert eyes that missed nothing, economical movements, an air of coiled readiness. Coffee? He offered, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. Please. Black. As he poured, I studied the office. No personal photos, no diplomas on the walls, just efficiency and order. This was a man who understood secrets. Tell me everything, he said, settling behind his desk. Start from the beginning. When did you first notice changes in your wife's behavior? I talked for an hour, laying out every detail I could remember. The new interest in yoga after my father's death. The late nights reading in the guest room because of my snoring. Something she'd never complained about in 25 years. The sudden interest in my health, my life insurance, my newly inherited wealth. Marcus took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he leaned back, fingers steepled. Your instincts are correct. This has all the hallmarks of a sophisticated romance scam, possibly worse. The timing with your inheritance isn't coincidental. These people, and I do mean people plural, often work in networks. They identify targets through public records, obituaries, business journals. Your father's illness and death would have been published in the financial press given his real estate holdings. You think Alexander targeted Patricia because of my father? I think Alexander may have been targeting you through Patricia. These operators are patient. They spend months, sometimes years, setting up the perfect scenario. The yoga instruction gives him regular access, creates intimacy, provides cover for large cash transactions. The beneficiary changes. That's endgame positioning. Endgame? My mouth was dry despite the coffee. Mr. Townsend, I need to ask you something directly. Do you have any health issues? Take any regular medications? Have you felt unusually tired lately? Any unexplained symptoms? No, nothing. I just had my annual physical, clean bill of health. Good. Keep it that way. Don't accept any food or drink you haven't prepared yourself. Vary your routines, and absolutely do not engage in any high-risk activities, no matter how much encouragement you receive. He pulled out a tablet, swiped through some files. I'm going to start immediate surveillance on both your wife and Dimitrov. Background checks, financial forensics, the works. But I need you to continue playing along. Can you do that? I've been married to her for 25 years. We have 2 children together. How do I pretend everything's normal when she might be planning to... I couldn't finish the sentence. By remembering those children, Marcus said firmly, they need their father alive and their inheritance protected. Channel your emotions into purpose. We're going to document everything, build an airtight case, and ensure she can never hurt you or anyone else. Has he done this before? Alexander? Marcus's expression darkened. I'll know more after I run his background, but the pattern suggests this isn't his first time. These predators rarely stop at one victim. If I'm right, your wife isn't just having an affair. She's been recruited into something much darker. I left the meeting feeling hollow. The drive back to Greenwich was a blur. How do you process the possibility that the person you've shared your life with, had children with, built dreams with, might be planning your death? At home, I found Patricia in the kitchen, preparing lunch. She'd changed into yoga clothes. Lululemon everything, of course. The outfit probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. "You're home early," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Everything okay at the office?" "Slow day. Thought I'd work from home this afternoon." I studied her movements, looking for signs of what? Guilt? Deception? Murder? Going to class? Private session. Alexander's helping me work through some energy blockages. She busied herself with her water bottle, adding what looked like protein powder. "I might be late. He wants to introduce some new techniques." "Energy blockages," I repeated. "Is that what they're calling it now?" She looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just sounds very new age." "Well, maybe if you tried being more open-minded, you'd understand the benefits. Not everything in life is about numbers and markets, Richard." "You're right," I said mildly. "Enjoy your session." After she left, I searched the house methodically. Her home office, usually meticulously organized, showed signs of disturbance. Papers shoved into drawers, her laptop missing. In our bedroom, I found receipts hidden in her jewelry box. La Perla lingerie, charges from the St. Regis Hotel in Manhattan, purchases from Bergdorf Goodman on days she'd supposedly been at yoga. In the back of her closet, behind boxes of designer shoes, I found a burner phone. The only contacts were A and several numbers with no names. The text history had been deleted, but the call log showed dozens of late-night conversations. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, can you talk?" I stepped onto the back terrace, overlooking our pool and gardens. "Yes." "I've pulled Dimitrov's background. You need to hear this. Real name is Alexei Volkov. Born in Newark, not Moscow. Criminal record as a juvenile. Sealed, but I have sources. Started with elderly scams, moved up to romance fraud. Changed his name legally 5 years ago after a close call with authorities in Florida." "Florida?" "Wealthy widow named Eleanor Hastings. Died in a swimming accident 3 months after changing her will to benefit her spiritual advisor. Case went cold. He relocated to Connecticut shortly after. There's more. I've identified at least 4 women in the tri-state area who've been involved with him. 2 are dead, ruled accidental. 1 is in a nursing home with early onset dementia at 55. The 4th, she's missing." My legs felt weak. I sank into a patio chair. "Patricia is in danger too, most likely. These men don't leave loose ends. Once they get what they want, the accomplice usually has an accident too. We need to move faster than I initially thought. How much does your wife know about your daily routines?" "Everything. We've been married 25 years, yes. That's a lot of intel for someone to weaponize. Starting tomorrow, I want you to vary everything. Different routes to work, different coffee shops, different gym times. And Mr. Townsend, does your wife have any trips planned?" I thought back to breakfast. She mentioned wanting to visit her sister in Boston next weekend. Alone? She didn't say, but usually I go with her. This time, you're too busy with work. Under no circumstances are you to be alone with her in a car for extended periods. And if she suggests any activities, hiking, boating, anything isolated, you decline. That evening, I watched Patricia prepare dinner with new eyes. Every movement seemed calculated now. The way she insisted on refilling my wine glass. How she hovered while I ate, watching each bite. Was the chicken properly cooked? Had she added something to the sauce? "You're not eating much," she observed. "Don't you like it?" "Late lunch," I lied. "Big client meeting. You know how those go." "You work too hard." She moved behind my chair, began massaging my shoulders. Her touch, once comforting, now made my skin crawl. "Maybe we should take a vacation. Just the 2 of us. Somewhere adventurous." I was looking at this amazing resort in Costa Rica. Zip lining, rock climbing, all sorts of excitement. "Sounds dangerous." Her hands stilled. Since when did you become so risk-averse? The Richard I married would have jumped at the chance for adventure. The Richard you married was 26 and stupid, I said lightly. Now I have more to lose. Or more to live for, she countered, resuming the massage. Think about it. With your father's money, we could travel anywhere, do anything. Doesn't that excite you? What excites me is watching our kids graduate, walking Emma down the aisle someday, meeting our grandchildren. Hard to do that if I'm splattered at the bottom of a Costa Rican ravine. She laughed, but it sounded forced. So morbid. I'm talking about living life to the fullest, and you're imagining death. Occupational hazard. I calculate risk for a living. That night, she initiated intimacy for the first time in months. I pleaded exhaustion, citing the stress of managing the inheritance. She seemed relieved rather than disappointed, turning away quickly. In the darkness, I lay awake, wondering how many other nights she'd pretended to want me while thinking of him. The next morning, Marcus called early. I have photos. Can you meet? This time we met at a diner in Norwalk, anonymous among the breakfast crowd. He slid a folder across the table. The first photo showed Patricia entering an upscale apartment building in Westport. Timestamp 2:47 p.m. during yesterday's yoga session. The next showed her leaving at 5:15 p.m., hair mussed, reapplying lipstick in the reflection of the door. That's Dimitrov's building, Marcus explained. Rent is $4,500 a month. His declared income last year was $65,000. You do the math. More photos. Patricia and Alexander at a cafe, leaning close over coffee, her hand on his thigh. His fingers playing with her wedding ring, my grandmother's ring, reset with diamonds for our 10th anniversary. This one's interesting, Marcus said, pulling out a grainy shot. Recognize the woman on the left? I studied it. Patricia, Alexander, and Margaret Worthington from our club. Whose husband died in that boating accident last year? She's been funding Dimitrov's lifestyle ever since. Bought him the Porsche, pays for the apartment. Your wife knows. She's not just cheating, Mr. Townsend. She's been recruited into his operation. What? Look at this. Another photo. Patricia at a bank, making a cash withdrawal. Now this? Security footage from the same bank, different day. Margaret Worthington handing Patricia an envelope. They're working together. Margaret funds him, your wife provides what? Cover? New targets? Or maybe she's being groomed as his next financial source. My coffee turned cold as I processed the implications. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a criminal enterprise operating in our social circle, hunting wealthy spouses like big game. There's more, Marcus continued. I pulled the police report from Eleanor Hastings' death in Florida. The responding officer noted signs of struggle, but the medical examiner ruled accidental drowning. Guess who found the body? Her yoga instructor who'd arrived for their morning session. And guess who called 911 in a panic, establishing his alibi? Eleanor's best friend, who'd been having an affair with him, I guessed. Close. Eleanor's personal assistant, who'd been taking private lessons. She inherited a small bequest in Eleanor's will, enough to start over in a new state. Say, Connecticut. You think Patricia might be? I think your wife is in deeper than she knows. These men are masters of manipulation. They make women feel special, chosen, enlightened. By the time the women realize they're accomplices to murder, they're too compromised to back out. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, going through the motions at work while my mind raced. Should I confront Patricia? Go to the police? Take the kids and run? Every option seemed to lead toward disaster. That evening, I found Patricia in the living room, photo albums spread across the coffee table. She was crying softly, touching pictures from our wedding, our children's birthdays, family vacations. What's this about? I asked carefully. She looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. Do you ever wonder where the time went? Look at us here, so young, so in love. What happened to those people? I sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. They grew up, had kids, built a life. That's what happens. But did we build it together or just Parallel to each other? She touched a photo from Emma's high school graduation. When did we stop being partners and start being roommates? It was manipulation, I knew. Part of whatever script Alexander had given her. But underneath, I heard real pain. Maybe she did regret what she was doing. Maybe there was still time to. I've been thinking about your idea, she said suddenly. The vacation. Maybe we do need time away. Just us. To reconnect. Warning bells screamed in my head. What brought this on? I had coffee with Margaret Worthington today. She was telling me about this amazing resort in Mexico. Very exclusive, very private. They have these cliffside villas with private pools. She says the sunrise from the cliffs is to die for. To die for. Was that intentional? A Freudian slip? Or was I parsing every word for hidden meaning now? Sounds nice, I said neutrally. When were you thinking? Soon. Maybe next month? Before the summer heat really kicks in? She moved closer, placed her hand on mine. I know things have been different between us lately, but I want to fix that. I want us to be like we were. So do I lied. Let me check my calendar at the office. The inheritance has created a lot of complex positions I need to unwind. She squeezed my hand. Of course, but don't wait too long. We're not getting any younger. Anything could happen. That night, I made a decision. Playing defense wasn't enough. If Patricia and Alexander were planning something, I needed to get ahead of it. I called Marcus from my car the next morning, parked in a commuter lot 2 towns over. I need everything, I said. Financial forensics, surveillance, background checks, and I need to protect my assets immediately. I'll put my full team on it. What about your wife? I'll keep playing along, but I want you to do something else. Can you look into Margaret Worthington's husband's death? Really look. Already on it. I've got a source in the Coast Guard who was part of the search. He always thought something was off about the accident. Give me 48 hours. Those 2 days crawled by. I went through the motions of normalcy, work, dinner, small talk about the kids. Patricia seemed to relax, interpreting my distance as acceptance rather than suspicion. She increased her yoga sessions to daily, always returning with that telltale glow of infidelity. On Thursday, our son James called from Stanford. Dad, is everything okay? Mom's been texting me weird stuff. My heart rate spiked. What kind of stuff? Questions about my trust fund. When I get full access, whether I can change beneficiaries. And she wanted to know if you'd mentioned updating your will recently. It's strange, right? Very strange. What did you tell her? Nothing specific. Said I'd have to ask you. Dad, what's going on? I made a split-second decision. Can you come home this weekend? Bring Emma. Tell her it's important, but don't tell your mother. Make up an excuse. A friend's party, whatever works. Dad, you're scaring me. I'll explain everything when you're here. Just trust me. That evening, Patricia was practically vibrating with excitement. I booked our Mexico trip. 4 nights at Las Ventanas, ocean views, private pools, couples massage. It'll be like a second honeymoon. When? 3 weeks. I know it's soon, but they had a cancellation. Presidential suite. I used miles for the flights, so it's practically free. 3 weeks. Was that their timeline? Did I have 3 weeks to live? Sounds perfect, I forced myself to say. I'll make sure my calendar is clear. She kissed me then, really kissed me, for the first time in months. It took everything I had not to recoil. Behind her lips, I felt the betrayal, the calculation, the horrifying indifference to 25 years of shared life. Friday brought 2 crucial developments. First, Jennifer Walsh called. Richard, I've expedited those trust documents. Can you come in tomorrow? Alone? Second, Marcus left a voicemail. Major developments. We need to meet. Bring a lawyer. I met Marcus that evening at his office. Jennifer Walsh was already there, looking grim. Tell him, she said to Marcus. He pulled out a thick folder. Robert Worthington didn't die in a boating accident. He was murdered. My Coast Guard source says the boat's GPS showed it anchored for 2 hours before the distress call. 2 hours when Robert was supposedly alone, waiting for friends who were conveniently delayed. The fuel line was cut, made to look like where, but the angle was wrong. Could they prove it? Not enough for criminal charges. But there's more. I've been tracing financial transfers. Margaret Worthington has been funding Dimitrov for 18 months. We're talking about $1.2 million so far. But here's the kicker. Your wife has been receiving payments from Margaret, structured as interior design consulting fees, but the amounts are way above market rate. Jennifer leaned forward. Patricia's been taking bribes to introduce Alexander to women in your social circle. She's not just a victim, she's an active participant in this conspiracy. My world tilted. You're saying my wife is pimping out her friends to a murderer? I'm saying she's been grooming targets, Marcus corrected. Look at her social media. Lunches with wealthy wives. New girls' trips to spas where Alexander just happens to teach workshops. She's the honey trap, establishing trust, making introductions. Then he moves in. How long? My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. How long has this been going on? Marcus consulted his notes. The payment started 8 months ago, 2 months before your father's public diagnosis. They'd been planning this before Dad even died. Every moment of comfort Patricia had offered during his illness, every tear at his funeral, all performance. What do I do? Jennifer spoke first. Protect yourself legally and financially? Tomorrow, we create an irrevocable trust for the inheritance. Update your will to leave Patricia the minimum required by law. Document everything for the divorce. And go to the police, Marcus added. This is a criminal conspiracy. Multiple victims across state lines. The FBI will be interested. I thought of Patricia at home, probably texting Alexander, planning my demise over pillow talk. What about my kids? Tell them, Jennifer said firmly. They're adults. They need to know their mother is dangerous. The weekend arrived with unseasonable warmth. Emma drove down from Yale. James flew in from Stanford. Patricia was surprised but pleased, fussing over their favorite foods, playing the devoted mother. I waited until she left for her Saturday session with Alexander, then gathered my children in my office. The story spilled out in painful detail. Their faces cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a cold understanding. Mom's trying to kill you? Emma's voice was steady, but her hands shook. Our mother is planning to murder our father for money? We don't know if she's planning to do it herself, I said carefully. But she's certainly positioned herself to benefit if something happens to me. James stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The adventure sports? She kept telling me how you needed to take more risks. Said you were becoming boring in your old age. I thought she was trying to help. She mentioned the Mexico trip to me, Emma added. Said it would be so romantic, like something from a movie, a cliffside villa. She emphasized the cliffs, Dad. Made a joke about how you'd better not sleepwalk. We spent the afternoon creating a plan. The kids would return to school but stay in close contact. I'd continue the charade while Marcus and the FBI built their case. Jennifer would handle the legal protections. Everyone had a role except Patricia, though she didn't know her part in our script was coming to an end. That night, she cooked an elaborate dinner, regaling the kids with stories from their childhood. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think she was a devoted wife and mother. But I saw the performance now, the calculated gestures, the hollow laughter, the way her eyes kept checking her phone. After the kids left Sunday morning, Patricia seemed energized. It was so good to see them. We should do this more often. Family time is so important. Absolutely, I agreed. In fact, I've been thinking about your Mexico idea. Maybe we should make it a regular thing. Monthly getaways, just us? Her eyes lit up with an emotion I couldn't quite read. Excitement. Triumph? Really? You'd do that? Why not? Like you said, we're not getting younger. Might as well enjoy life while we can. She hugged me then, and I felt her calculating the timeline. 3 weeks until Mexico. 3 weeks to maintain her cover. 3 weeks until she was a very wealthy widow. Over the next days, the investigation accelerated. Marcus's team uncovered a web of connections between Alexander and suspicious deaths across 3 states. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Jennifer finalized the trust documents, moving my father's fortune beyond Patricia's reach. I played my part perfectly. Booked restaurants for Mexico, researched activities, even bought new vacation clothes. Patricia interpreted every gesture as capitulation, her guard dropping more each day. Then, Marcus called with urgent news. Alexander's getting spooked. We intercepted communications. He wants to accelerate the timeline. You're not safe waiting 3 weeks. What do you suggest? We force their hand, but controlled conditions, with law enforcement ready. Can you trust me? Do I have a choice? The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I'd suggest moving the Mexico trip up, claiming a work conflict with the original dates. But first, I'd insist on meeting Alexander, framing it as acceptance of Patricia's new interest. The meeting would be wired, monitored, and surrounded by undercover agents. I've been thinking, I told Patricia that evening. I've been unfair about your yoga practice. Maybe I should meet Alexander, take a class. If he's that important to you, I should make an effort. She went very still. You want to meet Alexander? Why not? You speak so highly of him. And if we're going to start fresh in Mexico, I should probably be more open to your interests. I watched her process this unexpected development. I'll ask him. He's very busy, but maybe... Actually, I have a better idea. Why don't you invite him to dinner? Here, Friday night. I'll cook. We can get to know each other in a relaxed setting. Here? Her voice pitched higher. In our home. Unless you'd prefer a restaurant. I just thought home would be more intimate, less formal. She was trapped by her own lies. To refuse would seem suspicious. I'll ask. He might be traveling, but I'll see. Wednesday morning, she announced that Alexander had accepted. He's actually excited to meet you. He says the resistance from husbands is often the biggest barrier to family wellness. Family wellness, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? She missed the sarcasm. He has this whole philosophy about energy alignment within family units. It's fascinating. That afternoon, I met with Detective Sarah Chen from the FBI. She was younger than I'd expected, with an intensity that suggested personal investment in these cases. We've been tracking Dimitrov for 2 years, she explained. Never had enough for an arrest. Your evidence changes everything, but we need him on tape discussing the conspiracy. Can you get him to talk about the Mexico trip? I'll try. What about Patricia? She's harder to prosecute without direct evidence of intent to harm. But financial fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, those we can prove. If she flips on him, she won't, I said with certainty. She's too deep now. Image means everything to her. She'd rather risk prison than admit she fell for a con artist. Friday arrived gray and humid, thunderstorms forecast for evening. Appropriate weather for what was coming. I spent the day cooking, beef Wellington, Patricia's favorite. If this was our last meal as a married couple, I'd make it memorable. Alexander arrived at 7, and I understood immediately how he'd succeeded. He was devastating in person, tall, athletic, with eyes that seemed to promise understanding of your deepest desires. He moved like a dancer, each gesture deliberate, but appearing natural. Even knowing what he was, I felt the pull of his charisma. Richard, he said, taking my hand in both of his, I'm so pleased to finally meet. Patricia speaks of you constantly. All good, I hope. He laughed, rich and warm. A woman who speaks only good of her husband is lying. Patricia is honest about your strengths and your areas for growth. That's what I appreciate about her. Clever. Establishing himself as someone Patricia confided in while subtly undermining me. I played along, pouring wine, asking about his background. The lies flowed smoothly. Swiss boarding school, university in Paris, spiritual awakening in Tibet. Each anecdote perfectly crafted to impress without being verifiable. Patricia watched us interact with barely concealed anxiety. Patricia tells me you're interested in expanding your horizons, Alexander said over the main course. Trying new experiences. I think that's wonderful at your age. My age? Well, the 50s can be when men either embrace life fully or begin the slow decline. You're choosing life. That takes courage. Speaking of which, I said, refilling his wine, Patricia and I are planning a trip to Mexico. She mentioned you know the area well. His eyes sharpened slightly. Mexico is beautiful. Where are you staying? Las Ventanas. Patricia picked it. Excellent choice. Very private. The cliffside suites are spectacular. Perfect for romance. He smiled at Patricia, who blushed like a schoolgirl. Have you been? I asked innocently. Several times. I actually recommended it to a client last year. Poor woman, recently widowed. She needed somewhere to heal. How thoughtful, I murmured. Did it help? Tremendously. She said it changed her life. Gave her a new perspective on everything. He paused meaningfully. Sometimes we need to stand at the edge to truly appreciate life. Or to end it, I said quietly. The silence that followed was electric. Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. Alexander went very still, studying me with those penetrating eyes. That's a dark thought, he said finally. Is it? Cliffs are dangerous. Accidents happen, especially to people who might be distracted, or drugged, or pushed. Patricia stood abruptly. Richard, what are you saying? I remained seated, calm. I'm saying that I know everything. The beneficiary changes, the affairs, the payments from Margaret Worthington, the dead women in Florida and New Jersey, everything. Alexander's mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and reptilian beneath. You're upset. That's understandable. But making wild accusations. Oh, they're not wild, they're very specific and documented, and currently being reviewed by the FBI. I smiled pleasantly. In fact, they're listening right now. Hello, Detective Chen. The front door burst open. Federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn. Alexander lunged for the knife block, but was tackled before he could reach it. Patricia screamed, backing against the wall. Patricia Townsend, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and money laundering, Detective Chen announced, approaching with handcuffs. Richard? Patricia's eyes were wild, desperate. You don't understand. He made me do it. He threatened me. I was trying to protect you. Stop, I said quietly. Just stop. I have the emails, Patricia. The ones where you joke about my life insurance. Where you discuss the best ways to make it look accidental. Where you call me boring and expendable. The fight went out of her. As the handcuffs clicked closed, she looked at me with something like wonder. How long have you known? Long enough to protect our children from you. Long enough to ensure you'll never hurt anyone else. They led them away in separate cars. Alexander maintained his silence, already calculating his next move. Patricia sobbed hysterically, mascara streaming down her face. The neighbors would have a field day. Detective Chen stayed behind. You did well. Your testimony will be crucial. Will it be enough? With the financial evidence, the surveillance, tonight's recording, they'll both do serious time. And Mr. Townsend? You probably saved several lives tonight. This was heading towards something much worse. After everyone left, I stood in my empty house, thunder rumbling overhead. 25 years of marriage reduced to evidence bags and crime scene tape. But I was alive. My children were safe. The fortune my father had left would help people instead of funding murder. I called Emma first, then James. Brief conversations. Everyone was okay, more details tomorrow. Then I poured myself a scotch and sat in my office, looking at our wedding photo. Patricia radiant in white, me grinning like I'd won the lottery. In a way, I had. I'd just taken 25 years to lose it all. The storm broke around midnight, rain lashing against windows. I thought about Patricia in a federal holding cell, designer clothes replaced with institutional gray. Was she thinking of me? Of Alexander? Or just calculating her next move? It didn't matter. That chapter was closed. The trial dominated headlines for months. Socialite and lover plot husband's death. Black Widow yoga instructor linked to multiple deaths. Greenwich wife traded murder for millions. The country club revoked our membership. Fair enough. Patricia's defense was predictable. She was a victim, manipulated by a master criminal, feared for her life if she didn't comply. The prosecution methodically destroyed each claim. The emails were damning. The financial transfers clear. The surveillance footage undeniable. Margaret Worthington was arrested 3 days after Patricia, trying to board a flight to Switzerland. She turned state's evidence immediately, revealing 2 other women in the network, both in relationships with wealthy targets. The scope kept expanding. Alexander, true to form, tried to charm his way out. Claimed the relationships were consensual, the money gifts from grateful lovers. The deaths? Tragic coincidences. He might have succeeded with a different jury, but these 12 saw through him. Patricia got 15 to 25 years. Alexander got life without parole after they connected him to 4 murders. Margaret Worthington got 8 years in exchange for her cooperation. At Patricia's sentencing, she asked to address me. Against my lawyer's advice, I agreed. I loved you once, she said, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. Before the money, before him. I want you to know that. I know, I replied. That's what makes this worse. I got lost. The excitement, the attention. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be desired, to be seen as more than just a wife and mother. He made me feel alive. He made you feel useful, I corrected. There's a difference. She nodded slowly. Take care of our children. Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them yourself. They'll be adults for a long time. You have years to earn their forgiveness, if you can. I walked out without looking back. The financial aftermath took months to sort. The trust protected the children's inheritance. Patricia's assets were liquidated to pay restitution to victims' families. I kept the house but redecorated completely. No trace of her remained. Emma graduated summa cum laude, channeling her anger into academic excellence. Her thesis on financial fraud in intimate relationships won national recognition. James changed his major to criminal justice, inspired by Detective Chen's work. I returned to work, finding solace in numbers and logic. Markets could be volatile, but they followed patterns. Unlike people, they didn't pretend to love you while planning your death. About a year later, I received a letter from Patricia. Prison had aged her. The careful handwriting looked shaky, uncertain. Richard, it began, I know I have no right to contact you, but I need to warn you. Alexander had partners I never met. He hinted at a network that extends beyond what the FBI found. Please be careful. Despite everything, I don't want you hurt. I gave the letter to Detective Chen, who took it seriously. The investigation expanded again, uncovering similar operations in California, Texas, and Illinois. Patricia's information, limited as it was, helped save lives. I never wrote back. 3 years have passed now. I'm dating again. Linda, a prosecutor who worked on Patricia's case. She understands trust issues, having seen too much of human nature's darkness. We take things slowly, building on honesty rather than passion. Emma is engaged to a wonderful man who knows our family's story and loves her regardless. She's in law school now, focusing on victim advocacy. James works for the FBI, mentored by Detective Chen. The inheritance that nearly killed me funds scholarships and a foundation supporting fraud victims. Sometimes I drive past the yoga studio where it all began. It's a coffee shop now, serving overpriced lattes to commuters. I wonder if Patricia ever really attended a class, or if that too was performance. Recently, I received notice that Patricia had been attacked in prison. Apparently, she tried to run a smaller version of her scheme on a fellow inmate, promising to connect her with a wealthy pen pal. The woman, serving time for armed robbery, didn't appreciate the con. Patricia survived but spent weeks in the infirmary. Some people never learn. Last week was the 5th anniversary of our anniversary, the day I was supposed to die in Mexico. I marked it by taking that skydiving lesson, the one Patricia had tried to weaponize. The instructor, vetted thoroughly, guided me through every step. falling through the sky, I thought about choices. Patricia had chosen excitement over loyalty, money over marriage, Alexander over everything we'd built. Those choices had led her to a concrete cell. I'd chosen to trust the right people, protect my family, and fight back with intelligence rather than violence. Those choices had led me here. Alive, free, falling through space with a parachute I controlled. The landing was perfect, gentle as a kiss. As I gathered the silk, I saw Linda waiting by the hangar, smiling. Behind her, Emma and James cheered. My family, scarred but whole, tested but stronger. Patricia had promised me a life-changing experience. In her twisted way, she delivered exactly that. I'd lost a wife but found myself. Lost illusions but gained clarity. Lost the life I thought I had, but built something better on the ashes. The best revenge isn't living well. It's living authentically, surrounded by people who actually care if you live at all. As we drove home together, Linda's hand in mine, the kids arguing about dinner plans, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine contentment. Not the manufactured happiness of Patricia's performances, but real peace. My phone buzzed. Marcus Webb, now a friend, texting about poker night. Jennifer Walsh, reminding me about a charity board meeting. Detective Chen, sharing that another piece of Alexander's network had been dismantled. Life. Real life. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth protecting. Patricia had tried to take all this away from money she hadn't earned, using love she didn't feel, with a man who saw her as disposable as she'd seen me. She'd gambled everything on a murderer's promises and lost spectacularly. I'd almost feel sorry for her if she hadn't tried to kill me. Almost. But mercy, like trust, has to be earned. Patricia had 25 years to earn mine and chose instead to throw it away for yoga sessions that were never about flexibility. Now she has 15 to 25 years to think about that choice. And I have the rest of my life to live, surrounded by people who want me breathing. Seems like we both got what we deserved.